Well, let's pray and let's get into this evening's topic and then our Q&A. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you that you are a good God, not just a good God, a great God, perfect God, wonderful God, an amazing God. And thank you that you are everything that we need. And as we consider you, as we consider the topic of health and healing and various different challenges to health, we just ask for your spirit and your wisdom to be with us and to draw us close to you and work out your will and way. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. We are looking at this topic of healing, vital force, poisons, and immune dysfunction. So we are throwing a number of things together into one. Hopefully this will be helpful. So here we have our proverbial tree. And of course, there's things that we can learn from the tree. And when, of course, we look at the tree, we can see from a health standpoint, the tree represents health in a number of different ways. First of all, the fruit and the leaves represent the symptoms that an individual might have. In the healthcare system, as it has generally developed, we name different diseases based upon the symptoms and the signs that an individual has. So the symptoms are what you feel, the patient feels. The signs are what the physician observes or the clinician observes, whether listening with a stethoscope or observing rashes or feeling or, whatever. It's that observation. Those are signs, and symptoms are what you feel, your coughing, your pain, your soreness, your aching, and so on and so forth. And so a particular disease is oftentimes defined by the set of symptoms and signs that are specific for that particular disease. So from that standpoint, if the fruit and the leaves represent the symptoms, then the branches actually represent the diseases. Right? Because now each branch has a certain set of leaves, has a certain fruit or so on it, and so that's a particular disease. And there's so many branches, there are so many leaves and on a tree that it's just really for most trees. I mean, there's a few of them that are fairly easy to count all the leaves and the branches, but for most trees, it's just too much to be able to wrap your mind around. And so you have specialists, and you have a specialist in this part of the tree, and another specialist in another part of the tree, and another specialist in another part of the tree, and so, you don't have anybody that knows the whole tree, but you have, like the family practice doctor or so on, and they'll refer to this specialist and that specialist and that specialist that they think it's, this part of the tree that your problem is in. But when we think about the tree and all these leaves and branches, well, it all comes down to one trunk. And that tells me that it all comes down to one cause, right? One cause. And we read there is a divinely appointed connection between sin and disease. No physician can practice for a month without seeing this illustrated. If he will be observing and honest, he cannot help acknowledging that sin and disease bear to each other the relationship of cause and effect. Right? So, from this statement, which I believe in that statement, and from the tree analogy, we really can bring things down to one thing. When we get deep enough, we find that everything becomes simple, right? It all comes down to one cause. And yes, one cause can have many effects. There can be many branches and many, many leaves and fruit that come off of the one trunk, but it still comes down to one trunk. And like one domino falling can begin a chain reaction of millions of dominoes falling, Yet to find the cause, you must go to the first domino and what happened to that first domino. And as we looked at in the statement above, the cause of disease is sin. Right? So there can be many symptoms, there can be many different diseases, but there's one cause, and the cause ultimately is sin. Right? And there is no source of power other than God. So when we talk about healing, the power to exist, the power to love and to live, the power to heal, and so on. There's no other power other than God. And all nature is supplied with power from God and God alone. He's the only source, right? And he gives his power to nature through laws, and those laws serve as channels of his power to his creation for that particular function. And for every function that there is, there's a law that governs that function. And the channel or the law doesn't generate the power, it only transmits the power. The power comes from God and God alone. So God is personally involved in his creation. He is intentionally involved in his creation. He is actively involved in his creation, giving his power to his creation at all times to sustain its function at all times. He is not an absent God. He is not a distant God. He is not an unthinking, unknowing God. I mean, all the way down to subatomic particles, God's attention is being given at all times to his creation. And if he were to cease his active involvement in giving power to his creation, then it would cease to function. It would cease to exist. And sin there is breaking the law, right? It's breaking the law. And the law is the channel through which power gets to creation for it to function. And so breaking the law is cutting us off from the source of the power. Right? That's what it does. And without God's power, we'd immediately cease to function and we'd cease to exist. That's a problem. Many teach that matter possesses vital power, that certain properties are imparted to matter, and it is then left to act through its own inherent energy, and that the operations of nature are conducted in harmony with fixed laws with which God himself cannot interfere. This is false science. It is not sustained by the word of God. Nature is the servant of her creator. God does not annul his laws or work contrary to them, but he is continually using them as his instruments. Nature testifies of an intelligence, a presence, an active energy that works in and through her laws. There is in nature the continual working of the Father and the Son. So God is actively involved in nature, is actively involved in his creation, and so on. So is it possible that we're still alive even though we sin? Because if we cut ourselves off from the source of power, well, we should stop existing. We should stop living. Well, God gives his power now through another channel, and that is the channel of grace. Right? So we are on God's artificial life support system. We shouldn't be alive right now, but God is artificially preserving our lives. God's grace preserves our lives for a limited time. There's a time of probation in order to give us the opportunity to reconnect with him and be restored to obedience that flows from love and to be restored to his will and to be restored to his law, right? He's giving us that grace period in order for us to reconnect because he doesn't want us to be lost, right, forever. And if we do, if we reconnect, then we will live in harmony with divine law, moral law, and natural law, just like he created nature to function in the first place. Right? So while sin is the root cause of disease, even so, God's power is constantly exercised through nature to sustain its function and to restore. So anytime that we see restoration that happens, anytime that we see healing that happens, it is the active, purposeful power of God exercised through his laws to his creation that healing comes about. Right? So, God's healing power runs through all nature. If a tree is cut, if a human being is wounded or breaks a bone, nature begins at once to repair the injury. Even before the need exists, the healing agencies are in readiness. And as soon as a part is wounded, every energy is bent to the work of restoration. And who is it that's doing this? Well, it's the power of God, right? It's the power of God exercised in his creation. And yes, there are ways that we can cooperate with God's laws in nature in order to assist in the process of restoration. And many of you will recognize that this is not gross, this is charcoal. And charcoal is a wonderful thing that God has created. And He has, through the laws, through His channels of laws and His power and so on, there are so many things that can be done through the medium of charcoal, but only and always through the power of God. Now, remember, there's this statement in Ministry of Healing, page 127. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. In the case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed, wrong habits corrected. Then what? Well, then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. Okay. And so, all right, so we have the privilege to cooperate with the healing forces, God's healing forces in nature. And so that means that we work in a way that is consistent with physiology, with consistent with the way the body or the system functions in order to maximize or amplify that that system and the healing that comes along with it. Now, when it comes to expelling impurities, as it talked about, well, there's metabolic byproducts and there's other chemicals that we call impurities that are processed through the liver and the kidneys and the lungs and the skin. Those are the organs that expel or take care of what we might call toxins, right? They're expelled through the breath, the sweat, the urine, the feces, and anything that helps these organs in their function is going to assist nature in its effort to expel those impurities. Now, we call them impurities and we might call them toxins, and we do so because if we were to bring it in, it wouldn't be something that would feed us. It's not what we feed on. But what is waste for me is food for something else. Right? What is waste for me is food for something else. So these impurities are not bad in and of themselves, right? They're just something that needs to be given away. But everything takes and everything gives. And there is in a living system, there's a transformation of the molecular structure of what you take in and then what you give away. And so it's the giving part of the fundamental law of taking to give. If I take, but I don't give, I'm going to die. And that's because life is the effect of cooperating with or functioning by the law of taking to give. And we think of metabolic byproducts as bad because they aren't expelled, because when they aren't expelled, we get sick and we die, right? So we think of them as bad from that standpoint. And so we attribute the sickness or the death to the chemicals. But in reality, it's the sickness or the death, it's the result of the violation of the law of taking and give. We might be taking, but we're not giving, right? And if you take but you don't give, you cannot continue to live. If you try to give without taking, well, you can't live from that either. There must be the taking and then the giving, right? And yes, chemicals are involved. They're always involved, right? And they have an effect according to law, but the chemicals are not bad in and of themselves, right? What was wrong is the violation of law. That's the problem, right? The problem is the violation of law, not necessarily the conditions or the chemical effects associated with that. Restoring power to the system and reestablishing right conditions means that you're bringing the system back into its proper function. You're restoring proper physiology. You're coming back into harmony with the laws that govern the function of your being. And this restoration can be assisted with the proper use of nutrition. It can be assisted with the proper use of hydration, of rest, sunlight, hydrotherapy, and so on, right? There are these various different modalities that can assist nature in the process of healing, assist God's power through his laws in nature. But those things don't actually do the work of restoration. They only assist the work of restoration. Right? Now, if these remedies are used on or by the person that's ill, but the person themselves doesn't come into harmony with or obedience to the law, then the remedies will only have a partial or a temporary effect. Because the whole purpose is to restore proper function, and proper function can only be restored by coming back into harmony with law. So the power to restore does not come from the remedies or the treatments. The restoring power comes from God alone, but it's given to his creation through unchangeable laws. And one of those laws by which his power is given to creation and specifically to humanity is vital force. Vital means life, and so this is life force. And how this law operates in the context of sin, we're going to look at in these quotes that we're going to run through here. So, again, ministry of healing, God has endowed us with a certain amount of vital force. All right, so God has given us a certain amount of life power. Man came from the hand of his creator, perfect and beautiful in form, and so filled with vital force, life force, that it was more than 1,000 years before his corrupt appetites and passions and general violations of physical law were sensibly felt upon the race. More recent generations have felt the pressure of infirmity and disease more rapidly and heavily with every generation. The vital forces have been greatly weakened by the indulgence of appetite and lustful passion. So, interestingly enough, here we see that at the beginning, well, Adam and Eve were given a large measure of vital force, but over the years, the vital force has depleted, has gotten less and less, and you and I are not born with the same vital force that Adam and Eve were created with. We have much less now. God endowed man with so great vital force that he has withstood the accumulation of disease brought upon the race in consequence of perverted habits and has continued for 6,000 years. This fact of itself is enough to evidence to us the strength and electrical energy that God gave to man at his creation. It took more than 2,000 years of crime and indulgence of base passions to bring bodily disease upon the race to any great extent. I mean, you just don't hear about disease really in the history of the antediluvians. That only coming later after the flood, and then you start seeing that present, like with the Egyptians and so on, the diseases of the Egyptians. If Adam at his creation had not been endowed with 20 times as much vital force as men now have, all right, 20 times as much, the race, with their present habits of living in violation of natural law, would have become extinct. Right? So if Adam had been given the amount of vital force that we have now, the entire race of humanity would have become extinct before now. We wouldn't have made it this far. God did not create the race in its present feeble condition. This state of things is not the work of providence, but the work of man. It's our fault. It has been brought about by wrong habits and abuses, by violating the laws that God has made to govern man's existence. The patriarchs from Adam to Noah, with but few exceptions, lived nearly 1,000 years. Since the days of Noah, the length of life has been tapering. Because of the continued violation of the laws of life, mortality has increased to a fearful extent. The years of man have been shortened so that the present generations pass to the grave even before the age at which the generations that lived the first few thousand years after the creation came upon the stage of action. Disease has been transmitted from parents to children, from generation to generation. Infants in the cradle are miserably affected because of the sins of their parents, which have lessened their vital force. Their wrong habits of eating and dressing and their general dissipation are transmitted as an inheritance to their children. So you can see that that um, lifestyle has a clear contribution to the degradation of vital force, and that inheritance plays into this as well. Here's a statement from an appeal to mothers. Females possess less vital force than the other sex. Okay. So females have less vital force. And I suppose that um, if they lived as strenuously as men did, they would probably not live as long. That would be my guess, but you can take my interpretation and take it or throw it out. I don't know. But at least females possess less vital force than the other sex, but they apparently use it better because on average they live longer. Children are permitted to indulge their tastes freely, to eat at all hours, to help themselves to whatever tempts their eyes. The digestive organs, like a mill which is continually kept running, become enfeebled. Vital force is called from the brain to aid the stomach in its overwork, and thus the mental powers are weakened. All right, so here you can have vital force that is drawn from where? From the brain. All right. So it seems like the generating force or the central force of vital force is up here in the head, and it can be drawn to different parts of the body and drawn down, almost like a battery. Sometimes the result of overeating is felt at once. In other cases, there is no sensation of pain, but the digestive organs lose their vital force, and the foundation of physical strength is undermined. Right? So we get the idea that there can be dietary factors, lifestyle factors that have an effect upon this vital force. Those who make great exertions to accomplish just so much work in a given time and continue to labor when their judgment tells them they should rest are never gainers. They are living on borrowed capital. They are expending the vital force they will need at a future time. And when the energy they now have so recklessly used is demanded, they fail for want of it. The physical strength is gone. The mental powers fail. They realize that they have met with a loss, but do not know what it is. Their time of need has come, but their physical resources are exhausted. Everyone who violates the laws of health must sometime be a sufferer to a greater or less degree. God has provided us with constitutional force, or vital force, which will be needed at different periods of our lives. If we recklessly exhaust this force by continual overtaxation, we shall sometime be the losers. Right? So it'll catch up on you. You can use too much too early, like a runner in a race that puts too much energy early in the race and then peters out at the end and doesn't win the race. Well, you can do the same thing when it comes to vital force. Those who practice self-abuse, this would be, masturbation, sacrifice physical strength and reason upon the altar of lust. Such are just as surely self-murderers as though they pointed a pistol to their own breast and destroyed their life instantly. In the first case, they linger longer, are more debilitated, and destroy gradually the vital force of their constitution and the mental faculties, yet the work of decay is sure. Right? So again, some more lifestyle factors or things that you can participate in that can decrease the vital force. Those who acquire and indulge the unnatural appetite for tobacco are destroying nervous energy, lessening vital force, and sacrificing mental strength. So if you smoke, you chew, you use tobacco products, and so on, then you're going to be decreasing your vital force. Proportionately, as nature's laws are transgressed, mind and soul become enfeebled, physical suffering of every type is seen. Suffering must follow the course of action. The vital force of the system cannot bear up under the tax placed upon it, and it finally breaks down. Right. So when we're transgressing nature's laws, right? People need to be taught that drugs do not cure disease. It is true that they sometimes afford present relief, and the patient appears to recover as a result of their use. This is because nature has sufficient vital force to expel the poison and to correct the conditions that cause the disease. Health is recovered, excuse me, in spite of the drug. But in most cases, the drug only changes the form and location of the disease. Often the effect of the poison seems to be overcome for a time, but the result remains in the system and works great harm at some later period. Well, yep, drugs don't cure, they only change the nature and the location. God has endowed us with a certain amount of vital force. He has also formed us with organs suited to maintain the various functions of life. And he designs that these organs shall work together in harmony. If we carefully preserve the life force and keep the delicate mechanism of the body in order, the result is health. But if the vital force is too rapidly exhausted, the nervous system borrows power for present use from its resources of strength. And when one organ is injured, all are affected. Nature bears much abuse without apparent resistance. She then arouses and makes a determined effort to remove the effect of the ill treatment she has suffered. Her effort to correct these conditions is often manifest in fever and various other forms of sickness. When the abuse of health is carried so far that sickness results, the sufferer can often do for himself what no one else can do for him. The first thing to be done is to ascertain the true character of the sickness and then go to work intelligently to remove the cause. So, in summary, God has given to mankind a certain measure of vital force, and connected to God, having Him as our source, eating from the tree of life, that vital force would never diminish. Separated from Him in the tree of life, that vital force has diminished over the years. The rate of decline is consistent with one's violation of natural law. The greater the violation, the greater the decline. And the greater use of vital force early in life means that there's less available later in life. As vital force is passed on through inheritance, the violations of prior generations affect following generations, so inheritance becomes an issue. And while I have no responsibility for what my ancestors have done, what they have done with their lifestyle and how they have lived and so on, I do have a present responsibility to cooperate with God in stewarding His body and His spirit, which I get to use, but they belong to Him. And my actions can impact future generations, but even though that is the case, it never takes away their own personal responsibility during their own lifetime. And presumably, if time were to last long enough and the sinful neglect of God's creation progresses from generation to generation, then vital force would become so low that people would not live long enough to procreate and humanity would die out. It wouldn't exist. So these are things that we can see and understand in relation to vital force. And then this plays into how we recover from certain insults. If you have an accident, if you have significant trauma, if there is a significant infection, if you are poisoned or other things of that nature, your ability to recover is, in a degree, going to be dependent upon the remaining vital force that is available, right? So, um, so poisons. Now, let's talk about poisons for a little bit, because everybody's concerned about chemicals and, and the effect of chemicals on their health and so on. What about this poison? What about that poison? And so on. And we do live in a very, what should I say, chemical-laced world. We do. Um, Poisons are chemicals that react with certain chemicals in the body. And what they do is they disrupt the normal function of the chemicals in the body. So some poisons interfere with certain proteins in the blood clotting cascade, resulting in uncontrolled bleeding. Like, for instance, if you got bit by a rattlesnake or a king cobra, they have what we call a hemotoxin, and that hemotoxin interferes with the blood clotting cascade so that you can't form blood clots like you should, and then you bleed out, right? Other poisons interfere with hemoglobin molecules, preventing the release of oxygen. And even though your blood is nice and red because you've got all this oxygen attached to the iron molecules in the hemoglobin, but it just can't release it to the cells. And so then the cells suffocate, right? There are all sorts of different poisons. And what a poison does is it disrupts existing function. And when it disrupts the existing function by interfering with the chemicals involved in that function, then of course it results in dysfunction. Now, the effect of the poison is dependent upon what chemical it is, right? What it reacts with, how much of the poison is absorbed, and how much vital force the individual has. And the concentration of that poison. So if you take the same amount of poison in a large individual and the same amount of poison in a small individual, the small individual is going to be affected significantly more because the concentration of that poison is going to be higher. So the greater the amount of the poison absorbed, the more deleterious or the worse the effect is. And the greater the vital force that the individual has, the less deleterious or the effect will not be as bad. And then the question is, do we have to fear poisons? Do we go around always fearing what's on our food, what's in our drinks, what's in our environment that we can't see and tell, smell and taste and so on? Well, no. Mark 16, 17, and 18. And these signs will follow those who believe in my name. They will cast out demons, they will speak with new tongues, they will take up serpents, and if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick and they will recover. Now, this doesn't mean that you take a cup of known poison and you drink it because God made this promise. No, that would be presumption, right? It's not for us to presume upon God's grace. God is talking about his disciples. He's talking to his disciples, and in his essence is saying, when you're going out and you're being about my business and you're spreading the gospel and you're speaking to others and so on, you will generate enemies. There will be people that hate you. They don't like the messages that you share. And one of the ways that they got rid of people that they didn't like in those days was poisoning. And Jesus was saying, I don't want you to worry about the things you can't smell, taste, hear, and so on. Yes, there's going to be dangers that are out there for sure, but I am with you. I'm your protector. I will take care of things. You be about my Father's business. You be sharing the gospel and doing what you need to do. I will take care of the things that you cannot see, that you cannot understand, that you cannot smell, that you cannot, you know, um, If there's some kind of poison or something like that you come into contact with, I'll take care of that. Now, what if you have something that is not a poison? It's something that's good in and of itself. And now you have effects from it, and it's not a poison, right? For example, there are many people that have gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance. I have um, a strong family history of celiac disease or gluten intolerance. So, yes, we have a strong history of celiac disease in our extended family. And all sorts of really difficult symptoms that people get when they eat any gluten-containing products, right? So, what happens when your healing and repairing system malfunctions? Because here in celiac disease, you have the immune system that is attacking various different aspects of the body when there is a particular trigger that is present. Right? And what happens when the system damages or destroys normal cells or targets normal things as abnormal? Right. Well, what happens is you get allergies and you have immune diseases. Right. This is where allergies and immune diseases are coming from. This is where it's kind of the background of it. Now, what happens with your immune system? Well, you have white blood cells, various different kinds of white blood cells. You have neutrophils and lymphocytes and eosinophils and basophils and macrophages and so on, antigen presenting cells and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of different types of white blood cells. And then your B cells, your lymphocytes, B lymphocytes are the producers of antibodies. And and so the antibodies, they, as you see here, it kind of looks like a Y. And the very end, the two ends of the Y, this is one type of antibody. You have other antibodies that can have two Ys hooked together or five Ys hooked together and so on. and and so on. But this one is a simple one like IgG. And and those chemical ends have a particular, what should I say? It's almost like it has a particular suction cup, and that little suction cup can then attach to or suction onto something else. It has a binding site, and it can specifically bind to something. Not everything, but something very specific it can bind to. And so if it runs into the thing that it can bind to, then the antibody sticks on it. And there it is. And it's produced by certain lymphocytes. Now, these antibodies function, they have chemical reactions, and their chemical reactions are according to law, right? Every chemical reaction is according to law, and those reactions are governed by law. And if there's dysfunction, then there must be a violation of law somewhere, right? Must be a violation of law somewhere. And the question is, can an antibody violate law? And of course, the answer is no. It's just chemical. Can't violate law. It can only follow law. It can only function according to law. And so if there's a dysfunction, the dysfunction can't originate in the antibody. Can a white blood cell violate? And the answer is no. Right? Can the healing system itself violate law? Well, the answer is no. Even that can't violate law. So, what is it that can violate law? What is it that controls the healing system and guides its function? That's where we need to look. Right? So, if the healing system was working normally and then it stops working normally, if the healing system was working normally, and now it can go back and forth between various levels of working normally and working normally and not working, then where must you look in order to find the cause? Well, if you've been following this series and the presentations that we've had previously in these group sessions, then you know that you have to look to the mind, right? And to find what the issues are, we need to look at the best textbook that we can find on the mind and its relation to health. What textbook is that? The Holy Scriptures should hold the first place in every educational system, including medicine. Used as a textbook in our schools, the Bible will do for mind and morals what cannot be done by books of science and philosophy. God cares for us as intelligent beings, and He has given us His Word as a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. Its teachings have a vital bearing upon our prosperity in all the relations of life. Even in our temporal affairs, it will be a wiser guide than any other counselor. There is no social position, no phase of human experience for which the study of the Bible is not an essential preparation. We're told students' attention should be called not to the assertions of men, but the Word of God. Above all other books, the Word of God is to be our study, the great textbook, the basis of all education. The Bible must be regarded as the highest, the most important textbook. So, as we consider this issue of immune dysfunction, allergies, autoimmune disease, other things of that nature, then, and as we consider the basic textbook, the Bible, then we ask ourselves the question, what does the Bible have to say about immune dysfunction? So let's look at it. Let's look at what the Bible has to say about immune dysfunction. First of all, we need to recognize that the immune system has its origin in the bones. Okay? It's in the bones. That's where, well, when you have a little one that's growing up, you also have a thymus. It's right in the upper front part of the chest. And so you have some of the immune system being born in the thymus, but also in the bones. And then through the rest of your life, it's right there in the bones. And so it's in your bones that you have your white blood cells that are born. It's in the bones that you have your red blood cells that are born. It's in the bones that you have the platelets that are put off, and so on and so forth. So it's there in the bones that the blood, the cellular components of the blood is produced, right? And what is it? Um, if you go to the lab and you check a complete blood count with differential, it will tell you how much, how many red blood cells that you have, how many of the different white blood cells that you have, and so on and so forth. And the platelets, the number of platelets per unit volume, right? And so you can look at those numbers. Well, if I measured your blood this hour, and then the next hour, I took another sample and I got the numbers from it. And the next hour, and the next hour, and the next hour, you wouldn't like me very much. But if I kept doing that for every hour for the next 10 days, well, you would find out that those levels are constantly changing. They're constantly modifying, little bits, sometimes bigger bits, and so on. There's just constant fluctuations in the levels of the various different white blood cells, the red blood cells, the platelet levels, and so on and so forth. Why? Because there is a feedback mechanism that is constantly evaluating how much, how many, what's being produced, what's in the system, and so on and so forth. And then giving instructions for how many new ones need to be released, not released, and so on and so forth. And where is that coming through? Well, it's coming through the nervous system. In the bones, you have lots of nerves. And if you've ever broken a bone, you've got lots of nerves. Yeah, it hurts, right? It really hurts. I've broken a number of bones. And And so it's very painful, and that's because you've got all these nerves that are going in the bone. Well, those nerves are not just in the bone so that you can have pain when you break it. Those nerves are in the bone so that they can send signals to the bone marrow and they can receive information from the bone marrow as well to evaluate how much of the different blood cells are there, how much of what is being produced, and so on and so forth. So now, when we look to the Bible and we recognize that the immune system has its origin in the bone, now we're going to look to see what the Bible has to say about bones. All right? Bones and marrow. Bones and marrow. O Lord, rebuke me not in thine anger, neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure. Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are vexed. All right, so now you have bones that are vexed. Vexed is not a good thing. It's a bad thing. And and so if my bones are vexed, then this is going to be talking about the problem. All right, so what's the problem associated with vexed bones, which is going to be then associated with immune dysfunction? Well, my soul is also sore vexed. All right, so my bones are vexed because my soul is vexed. All right, so there's something going on here. But thou, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. O save me for thy mercy's sake. All right, so clearly there's a problem going on. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave, who shall give thee thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All right, so now you have somebody that's groaning. When do you groan? Well, you groan when you're under pain. You groan when you're in misery. You groan when things are not going well, and so on. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with my tears. When are you crying? Crying with pain, crying with loss, crying with disappointment, and so on. Mine eye is consumed because of grief. All right. Well, when do you have grief? When you have grief with loss, right? Loss of things, something important to you, someone important to you, a capacity or capability. It waxeth old because of all of mine enemies. All right. So you have somebody that has um, enemies, others that don't like them, that don't, that hate them, and so on and so forth. So some biblical causes of immune dysfunction here include discontent, grief, taking personally what others say and do, having enemies, right? And so on. All right, so here's another passage. This is Psalm 31, verses 9 through 13. It says, have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am in trouble. All right, so trouble. And down here we see my bones are consumed. So that means this is part of the problem, right? O Lord, for I am in trouble. Mine eye is consumed with grief. All right, so here we have grief again. Yea, my soul and my belly, for my life is spent with grief, and my years with sighing. My strength faileth because of mine iniquity. So now I have sin. I've got iniquity. My bones are consumed. All right, so these are all causes to be in trouble, to have grief, sighing, iniquity, or sin. All right, all of these are things that are going to affect the immune system and its function. I was a reproach among all my enemies. All right, so now I'm not respected, but especially among my neighbors, and a fear to mine acquaintance. They that did see me without fled from me. I am forgotten as a dead man out of mind. I am like a broken vessel, for I have heard the slander of many. Fear was on every side while they took counsel together against me. They devised to take away my life. All right, so here's, I am, um, I'm feeling abandonment. I'm forgotten. Um, I feel that others are slandering me. They took counsel together against me, so there's fear and so on. So some more biblical causes of immune dysfunction include being in trouble or out of control, grief, discontent, guilt, reproach, rejection and abandonment, slander, and fear. Right. All right. Psalm 38, verses 3 and 4. Right. There is no rest in my bones, right? There is no soundness in my flesh because of thine anger, neither is there any rest in my bones. All right, so that means this is part of the problem. Because of what? My sin. Right? So, sin. For mine iniquities are gone over my head as a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me. Right? So, so here again, guilt. Guilt is a prominent cause for immune dysfunction. Here is Psalm 102, verses 3 through 10. It says, for my days are consumed like smoke, and my bones are burned. So this is part of the problem as a hearth. My heart is smitten. All right, my heart is smitten. Maybe there's depression that's there, and withered like grass, so that I forget to eat my bread. And that's, that goes along with depression as well, a lack of appetite. By reason of the voice of my groaning, right? So maybe there's discontent. My bones cleave to my skin. I am like a pelican in the wilderness. I am like an owl in the desert. I watch and am as a sparrow alone, right? So we have loneliness here on the housetop. Mine enemies reproach me. So there's reproach all the day. And they that are mad against me are sworn against me. For I have eaten ashes like bread and mingled my drink with weeping. Right? So there's sadness because of thine indignation and thy wrath, for thou hast lifted me up and cast me down. So there's betrayal. So some more biblical causes of immune dysfunction are depression, discontent, loneliness, reproach, and betrayal. And in Psalm 109, verses 16 through 18, because that he remembered not to show mercy, but persecuted the poor and needy man, that he might even slay the broken in heart, and he loved cursing, so let it come into him. So here's somebody who's unmerciful. Here's somebody who persecutes, somebody who kills or slays, even with the tongue, maybe, loves cursing. As he delighted not in blessing, so let it be far from him. As he clothed himself with cursing, like as with a garment, so let it come into his bowels like water and like oil into his bones. Right? So this is more cause for immune dysfunction, being unmerciful, a persecutor, a murderer, cursing, and so on. Proverbs 12 and verse 4. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. Right? So that would be shame or disrespect or disloyalty. Those are things that can cause immune dysfunction. Proverbs 14:30. A sound heart is a life of the flesh, but envy, the rottenness of the bones. All right. So here you have envy as a cause for immune dysfunction as well. And Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. So a broken spirit, right? Broken spirit. So biblical causes for immune dysfunction: abandonment, betrayal, cursing, depression, discontent, disloyalty, disrespect, envy, fear, grief, guilt, being in trouble or out of control, loneliness, taking things personally, a murderer, a persecutor, rejection, reproach, shame, slander, being unmerciful, a broken spirit. All of those causes of immune dysfunction. Now, are those an internal cause or are those an external cause? Are those spiritual issues or are they lifestyle physical issues? Yeah, they're spiritual issues. They're internal things. Right. So, according to the Bible, immune dysfunction has an internal cause. So the cure, therefore, will be an internal one. And the exception is where you have a direct attack of the devil, like in Job's case, right? His immune system could not overcome the boils and so on because there was a particular attack that was happening at the time, and until the purpose of that attack was over, the boils were not going to finish. Now, that's the problem. What about the solution? Right? What about the solution? Because the Bible also addresses these things also. So the solution to immune dysfunction is where you find in the Bible there is um, strong bones, fat marrow, and so on and so forth. Right? So in Psalm 34, verses 17 to 20, says, "The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. He keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken." Now, yes, this is very much a prophecy. It's a prophecy of Christ and that none of his bones would be broken, but also in reference to the immune system and its association with the bones. Here is something that's good. And what is it? Well, the Lord hears me. The Lord is near to me. He saves me. He delivers me. Right. So knowing that God hears you, knowing that he delivers you, that he hears you, that he's near you, that he will save you, and having a contrite spirit and the righteousness of Christ, right? That is a solution for immune dysfunction. In Psalm 51, verses 7 through 12, it says, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken may rejoice." All right. So now we have rejoicing bones. Why? Because I'm purged or I'm cleansed from unrighteousness, cleansed from sin. I'm forgiven. Now I have joy and gladness. Hide thy face from my sins and blot out all of my iniquities. So a cleansed heart, creating me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Right? So this is a right spirit, a clean heart. Cast me not away from your presence. Take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit or thy generous spirit. Right? So biblical solutions to immune dysfunction include forgiveness, joy, gladness, a clean heart, a right spirit, salvation, and God's sustaining spirit. In Proverbs 3, beginning in verse 1, says, "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments." All right, so forgetting not his law, keeping his commandments. "For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones." Right. So here we see that a solution to immune dysfunction is keeping God's law from the heart. It's peace, it's mercy, truth, acceptance by God, right? Trusting in God, distrusting self, surrender, fear, and respect of God, right? Departing from evil. All of those are solutions. Proverbs 15, verse 30. "The light of the eyes rejoiceth the heart, and a good report maketh the bones fat." Right? Good report. Good report sounds like good news. Good news is the gospel. So the gospel of salvation, of the righteousness of Christ, of God's love for us, that was not willing to leave us in our sin and the condition that we got ourselves into, but has come to rescue us and provide a way to set us free and restore us to his likeness and to be with him in his kingdom forever. That is a solution to immune dysfunction. Proverbs 16:24, "Pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones." Right? Sweet to the soul and health to the bones. So that is pleasant words received from God and pleasant words spoken to others, taking and giving. We're also told, as many are familiar with, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine." Right? So a merry heart as well is a solution to immune dysfunction. And finally, looking at Isaiah 58 and beginning in verse 6, says, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh? Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily. And thy righteousness shall go before thee, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Then shalt thou call, and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, Here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, the putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity, and if you draw out thy soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness as the noonday, and the Lord shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make fat thy bones. And thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not." Right? So, solutions to immune dysfunction, well, that includes helping others to be free, sharing what you have freely with others, seeking out and helping those who are in need, knowing that God answers you, accepting others, encouraging them, and having contentment in God. Yep. So, biblical solutions to immune function: a clean or a merry heart, a right or a contrite spirit, a good report, which is the gospel, acceptance by God, accepting others, contentment in God, departing from evil, distrust of self, encouraging others, fearing God or respecting Him, forgiveness, gladness, God's sustaining spirit, helping others to be free, joy, keeping God's law from the heart, knowing that God is near you, that He hears you, answers you, delivers you, and will save you. Mercy, peace, pleasant words, both received from God and given to others. Righteousness, salvation, seeking out and helping those in need. Sharing what you have freely. Surrender, trusting in God, and truth. Right? So all of those solutions, are they internal solutions or external solutions? Are they a cure for the inside, for the soul, or are they a cure for the body? Well, they're a cure for the soul, which has an effect on the body. Right? So these are some thoughts on healing, vital force, poisons, and immune dysfunction. I'm sure there's a lot for us to chew on, and probably a lot for us to then have questions about. And so we'll pray, and then we'll get to our Q&A time. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you again for your blessings, your loving mercy to us. You are truly good. And Lord, open our eyes, help us to know you and love you and to be like you. Help us to understand how to cooperate with you best, that we might not waste the vital force that you have given, and that we might be about our Father's business, not afraid of the poisons and other things that we cannot see, but simply being about our Father's business. And Lord, may we be good students of your word, to understand the textbook, and to extract from it the things that we need to know what we need to know, that we might be free as you designed for us to be free. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, it's been a few weeks, and it's nice to be back together again. My throat is just... I thought it was back, but talking this long shows me that it's not exactly back. The reason we didn't have a group session last week is because I got a cold, and then I had laryngitis, and I wouldn't have made it this far, nearly this far, but it's almost back, but it's just still right there on the verge. And 4 very short nights in a row in travels, coming back from Colombia and then coming home and then picking somebody else at the airport and then going to, anyways, so it was fun. Maria, you have your hand up.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Dr. Sandoval, I've got like three questions, but I don't want to strain your throat any more than it's already strained. And if anybody else has any questions, I don't want to take up the whole time either. Oh, too much time.
Well,
Are there
your
any?
hand's up.
Okay, just was looking to make sure. So I ended up having the Schatzki's ring fixed or repaired, or the what they do to, you know, try to stretch it back out. I am, huh?
Dilator.
Dilated, yeah,
Mhm.
dilated. So I'm drinking and eating better. I'm doing okay, but they found out that I have gastritis, which I've had in the past, but there's no ulcer, no bleeding. It's just mild. Now I could take charcoal, but that would inactivate. And I'm trying to figure out, well, when would I take that to see if that would help, what times, because it will inactivate my propanolol for my palpitations. And when I stop taking it, I feel really bad. The palpitations seem to come back with a vengeance, and my heart rate goes up than it usually is. And then another question that I have is omeprazole. I take that and it does help, but I was reading the list and it says one of the things is it can lead to lupus.
Mhm.
And I've come up with abnormal RH factors, or
Okay.
that shows that I might have lupus. It might not be, but
Now, is it RH or ANA?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that one.
ANA. Okay.
Yeah. And then after I had this procedure on Friday for the dilation of the Schatzki's ring, I have a pain on my right back of my right side of my jaw, and I can't touch it. It's really tender. And all that I could think of, you know how they put the mouthpiece in to protect your teeth?
Right.
And I'm wondering if maybe has something to do with it. Plus, I keep forgetting to use my mouthpiece lately. So my mouth guard, not mouthpiece, mouth guard. So I don't know if
Okay.
it's that. That's
Okay.
it.
All right. So the Schatzki's ring, for those that aren't aware, it's kind of a connective tissue band around the esophagus, and the esophagus is the swallowing tube, and and it's quite mobile. It's very muscular, and it's a tube, and it needs to be able, when you swallow, to open up, and then it'll usually collapse down when you're not eating, But when you swallow and you have a bolus of food or water or something like that, then it'll open up and then it'll go through. And if you have that Schatzki's ring, then it has a connective tissue band kind of around the outside, and it can only open up a little bit. It can't really open up all the way, and then it makes it difficult, especially with eating solid foods. And the more thick and the more solid it is, the more difficult it is to get it past. And it's much easier with liquids and so on. And so an individual usually begins by having difficulty eating more solid foods, like if somebody's a meat eater and so on, when they're eating steak or other things of that nature, it tends to be a problem, but other things are not necessarily a problem. But then as it becomes more constricted, then more foods become problematic with it. And it can even become a problem where it becomes a problem with liquids as it gets bound down. Um, and there's the question of what causes it. I don't know that the healthcare industry has an answer for that. Usually, when you have scar tissue that's developing, there's an inflammatory process associated with it. So there would be inflammation, and then in response to the inflammation, there is kind of a healing response, but the healing response results in the deposition of scar tissue in the area. And then as long as that inflammation continues, then there's more scar tissue deposition that happens, and then it can become tighter and tighter. And if you have a localized inflammation, without any known trauma or anything of that nature. Um, and things progress from that standpoint. Um, and you had normal function previously, and it's something that develops later in life, and so on and so forth. And I would say it's not inheritance, and you should be probably looking at, the mind for um, for what might be the underlying cause in relation to it. That doesn't mean don't do any of the procedures like dilation or anything of that nature to help out. That's perfectly fine to do that, but also you want to be saying, okay, well, you know, all right, Lord, what still is in my mind that is according to error, um, and and help me to understand the truth that I need to understand so that the error can be replaced with the truth, and I can be free in the truth, and in the truth, and the mind can leave the esophagus free as well. Now, with the gastritis, it's a similar situation. The gastritis, I have no question of whether gastritis has ultimately its foundation in the mind as well, because it's usually not there when somebody's born. It usually is better at times, worse at times, kinds of comes and goes, can be gone for a while, comes back later, and so on. And those are all hallmarks of the mind being involved. And of course, it's the mind that's ultimately in control of how much acid is produced, how much mucus is produced, how much of the different digestive enzymes are produced, and so on and so forth. And if you have an overproduction of acid and an underproduction um, of mucus, then you end up having gastritis, and then it can progress to have ulcers and so on. And thankfully, yours is a mild case from that standpoint. And as far as charcoal is concerned, I wouldn't necessarily go with charcoal. I don't think that that's a, a great or the best way to go in regards to in regards to gastritis. But a couple of other things that I think are much more helpful would be aloe. So if you're taking aloe, the best would be the aloe itself. You cut the skin off of it and scrape out the gel from the inside. And you're usually looking at about a third of a cup of aloe 3 times a day, um, before meals. Um, if you don't have the aloe itself, then get aloe gel. If you can't get your hands on aloe gel, get aloe juice. And if it's the aloe gel, you take a little bit more. If it's the aloe juice, you take a little bit more because it's not as concentrated. Um, and um, and also there's slippery elm. And the way that I prefer is as a powder, slippery elm powder. And you get like a heaping tablespoon, stick it in a cup of water um, or juice or something like that, and mix it up. It kind of gels up a little bit. And then again, you take a third of a cup of that 3 times a day before meals. The aloe, like it heals, it helps in the healing process of the skin with burns and so on. It has a similar type of effect inside the digestive tract when you have acid burns, like with gastritis and ulcers. And the slippery elm helps to form kind of a boundary. There's another medication called octreotide, and octreotide, what it does is it basically creates a slime coat that coats the digestive tract that prevents some of that acid burning that happens. Well, the slippery elm does a similar type of thing. Edna in the chat says chlorophyll is amazing at helping healing gastritis. Great. And then, of course, avoiding overeating. Probably best to not eat the third meal for the day when you have gastritis. Definitely nothing later in the day. You want to make sure that the stomach is empty when you go to bed. Decreasing the amount of pressure that's on the stomach, whether that's body fat or whether that's belts or garters or something of that nature. Usually avoiding things that are spicy. Um, avoiding tomato products, that tends to be aggravating. Chocolate tends to be aggravating. Um, Caffeine tends to be aggravating. High fat diets and so on. That tends to be aggravating as well. Um, and so on. So all of those are things that you can look at, but at the same time, you're looking for the underlying issues of the mind. And what are the errors there? Is there worry? Is there fear? Is there control? Is there guilt? Is there bitterness? Is there conflict, stress, and so on and so forth? And then what are the thought processes behind that that may be contributing to those, and looking for the truth that sets you free in relation to those things. And finally, with the omeprazole, yes, the omeprazole. Um, another side effect of the proton pump inhibitors um, is is that of respiratory infections as well. Um, and um, and the list that I have right here for omeprazole: hypersensitivity reactions, anaphylaxis, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, toxic epidermal necrolysis, erythema multiforme, drug reactions, acute generalized exanthematous pustulosis, tubular interstitial nephritis, renal impairment, hepatic impairment, pancreatitis, fractures, um, low magnesium levels, lupus erythematosus, Clostridium difficile, associated diarrhea, agranulocytosis, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, hemolytic anemia, headache, abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, flatulence, fever, upper respiratory infections, vitamin B12 deficiencies, and fundic gland polyps.
Whew,
Yeah.
just a few.
Yeah, that's a typical list for medications. It's not a particularly, I mean, as far as medications go, it's a relatively innocuous one. It's not really one of the more dangerous ones, but it's got potential um, issues there.
Why? What's an alternative? Like,
The omeprazole, the aloe and the slippery elm, those are going to be much more helpful.
okay, not the papaya enzymes.
Well, the papaya and pineapple, they contain papain and bromelain, and those are digestive enzymes that can help with somebody that is having a deficiency in digestive enzymes. But gastritis is not really a digestive enzyme deficiency issue. It's really more of an imbalance between the production of acid and the production of mucus. Um, Although you could take the bromelain and the papain, and it may have a benefit in relation to digestion and the digestive process, but not so much in relation to the gastritis itself specifically.
And it is in the mind. It's a lot of stress, and I just recently had a big stress in my life, and I haven't vomited in years, and I used to vomit a lot as a child, when I was younger, and I
Mhm.
think that has something to do with developing a hiatal hernia. Not a hernia, esophageal hernia.
Yeah,
And,
hiatal hernia.
yeah, and I think that had something to do with it. So I know that stress and I vomited this time when stress all of a sudden came into my life unexpected. The end of October, beginning of November, and I got sick and I vomited really bad. And finally, I remembered I had some charcoal and I tried it, and I felt better for a bit.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have had gastritis before. I've had an ulcer. I've had a and I've been treated for, and I had coffee grounds emesis in the past.
Yeah. So you had an ulcer, bleeding
Yeah.
ulcer.
Bleeding ulcer, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So,
All right.
all right. Thank you.
Mhm. So, well, brother Stephen, do you want get your question in the chat or your hand?
Okay. Hi, Doctor Brother Mark.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. My son's got issue with. They say it's like a disc bulge on touching a nerve or something. Sciatica is it? Is
Yep.
that the terminology? Or
Hmm.
yeah, just wondering whether what would be the would comfrey or castor oil or do you have any? Would any of those two possibly help, or would you have any other ideas? Thank you,
Yes,
Brother
yes.
Mark.
So when it comes to a disc herniation, that's what you're talking about, a herniated disc. What's happening there? Let me just pull up a picture online. Uh,
He said he's not getting any pain in the lower legs. It's more, yeah, just sort of just lower back, sort of, near the hip and buttock, sort of.
Right. So I'm going to pull up a picture here just so everybody can visualize what's going on. Um, so here what you have is you have the spinal cord you have the bones and then you have the disc in between and then you have the next vertebra and then you have a disc in between the next vertebra and the disc and so on and so forth. Now, behind the major part of the bones and back in this space here, you have the spinal cord that's coming down, and at each
Yep.
level, you have a nerve that's coming out at each level. And what's happening with the disc herniation? This is usually at L4, L5 or L5S1. So this is the L4, L5 level right here. This is the L5S1 level. Those are the two most common levels, and L4, L5 is the most common. And you have this kind of harder part of the disc around the edges, the disc annulus, and then you have this softer part of the disc on the inside, and it's almost like you have a tire blowout, and the gel from the inside of this kind of pushes out, and then it pushes on the nerve root, and now it irritates it, and it's difficult now to get the signals um, um, back and forth from the brain to the spinal cord down to the legs and so on and so forth. And now you have pain, and usually the pain begins at the area of the back, although not always. And and then the pain starts traveling down the buttock, and then the pain starts traveling down usually the outer portion of the thigh, and then it can travel down and involve the knee and then the calf and then eventually down to the foot. Um, and as it progresses or as the compression becomes worse. Most individuals that have a disc herniation do not need to have surgery. Most do not. Some might, but most do not. Most can get away with physical therapy, with certain exercises, um, and with time, with time, and decreasing
Right.
inflammation that's going on in the area. Now, some things that can be done in order to help with it. One of those is proper posture, and that is making sure that he's not really bending over at the waist and picking things up off the ground, but using the knees. And so bending at the knees and picking things up, and so putting the stress through the knees rather than putting the stress through the back. Another thing that can be
Right.
done that is actually quite helpful is ice massage. And with ice massage, what you do um, is you get, let me pull this up as well. Um, so that we can see that also. So with ice massage, you can get something like these little devices where you put them in the top of a cup, you fill the cup with
Yep.
water, You freeze it in the freezer. Um, or the simple man's portion is just getting a styrofoam cup, filling it with ice, and then you tear off the top of it, and then
Right.
you use that part of the ice that's exposed, and then back. And then what you do is if, let's say, for instance, his pain is on the right side over here, then you rub that ice in kind of an oval motion next to the spine, not over the spine, but next to the spine, kind of an oval motion, oval motion, oval motion. And you keep doing that oval motion. At first, it feels cold, then it will feel hot, then it will feel achy, and then it will go numb. And so you want to go all the way to the point where it goes numb and you're not feeling any ache, anything with it. And then just dry it
Yeah.
off and leave it alone. Right. And then what happens is in order to heat it up, you need more blood flow. And so you're going to start putting more blood flow to that area in order to heat up those tissues. And the increased blood flow is going to help with the healing process, oxygenation of the tissues, including the pinched nerve and so on and so forth. For a while, you have a relief of the pain, but it also has a healing effect associated with it as well. And that can be done once a day, maybe twice a day, but I would say once a day. Another thing that can be done is hot and cold treatments to the low back. So you get towels that are moist. Um, like you get it in the water, wring it out, fold it up into the
Yep.
shape that could fit over the low back, throw it in a plastic bag, and then throw it in the microwave for like 4 minutes, get it really nice and hot, and then wrap it up with dry towel and then stick it over the area and leave it there for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then you get the ice or ice water washcloth and rub the area for about 30 seconds with the ice water, and then go back to 3 to 5 minutes with the hot, 30 seconds with the cold, and so on and so forth, 3 to 5 minutes back and forth. So, with proper posture, with the ice massage and the hot and cold treatments. You can use castor oil, like a castor oil poultice or a comfrey poultice to the back at night while the individual's sleeping, while your son's sleeping. That can be helpful as well. And
Yeah.
then, taking turmeric internally, it's anti-inflammatory. Ginger internally as well. That can help with pain and it's anti-inflammatory also. Uh, um, white willow bark is also anti-inflammatory. So those are things that can be helpful as far as internal consumption is concerned. Um, and then exercises. You can go online and you can look up exercises for disc herniation or exercises for low back pain in order to work on what we call core body stabilization. So you work on abdominal muscles, back muscles, gluteal muscles, thigh muscles, and so on, in order to strengthen the rest of the musculature around the spine so that the spine itself is not bearing as much of the burden, but the muscles are helping out with that burden. And usually with that, an individual can get through without having to have surgery. Um, and and now, can there be a mind component to that as well? Yes, there can. Um, there
Yeah.
have been there have been 3 times in my life where I have developed a debilitating sciatica. Um, and in reviewing each of those times, I didn't see a pattern. I wasn't looking for a pattern in the first 2 times. I just thought of things as physical
Right.
occurrences. And then when the third one came around, I started paying attention. And I realized that in each and every situation, in my case, I was in a situation where I was intimidated. I felt intimidated by somebody that I thought was an authority figure.
I see.
And in that and giving into that intimidation, Then I had my sciatica and so on. And and the third time, when I figured out what was going on and I surrendered that to God, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm I don't need to have people as my source. I need you as my source." And clearly, if I'm intimidated by somebody, then I'm having them as my source, and I'm going to take you as my source. And within a few hours, it was the most extensive as far as down my leg experience that I had with sciatica, but it went away within a few hours. The first two occurrences were several days. That
Right.
so
Could it happen with a forceful knee blow in the back? A
yeah,
forceful knee in the back, yeah? Gotcha.
yeah, it can happen with physical trauma as well. Hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mark. When you said the massage the ice until it gets numb, not on the spine, but did you say to do any heat, like heat treatment, or just let
No,
it,
no, just
just
ice.
leave it? Yeah.
Yep, and then you
Okay.
dry it off and then you leave it. Hmm.
Thanks very much. Really
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Now there's a few comments in the chat, and then we'll get to you, Jeannie. Um, the Lord is close to those with a broken heart. What is a broken heart? Well, I think it can describe a number of different things, including depression, grief or loss, um, um, a giving up on things, and so on because of just a significant discouragement or uh, an idea that things are just not going to work. I think there's a number of ways of looking at or describing a broken heart, but it's a significant issue in the life of the individual that causes them significant spiritual or emotional distress that then has effects in the body. Right?
What if it's depression from what if it's depression from life's, like the 8 laws of health? If it's brought on self perpetuated, if that's, what I mean.
Yes, but depression doesn't come from the laws of health. I mean, it can be, you can have an association, right? There can be an association between the underlying issues of the mind that lead to poor lifestyle and the very same underlying issues of the mind that lead to depression, right? But both are effects of the underlying issue of the mind. It's not the lifestyle issues in and of themselves that lead to the depression, right? Because the lifestyle issues are an effect as well. They're an effect of what we believe. They're an effect of the choices that we make and so on and so forth. And that is influenced by what's going on in the mind. And so both of those are secondary effects of the primary thing that's going on in the mind. All right. Are you able to re-show the first Ellen White quote that you referenced? Sure. Let's go back. First Ellen White quote. And let's go back to the beginning. If this is the one you were thinking of, it is Counsels on Health, page 325, a divinely appointed connection between sin and disease. Right. And again, that's CH 125. And if that was not it, then the second quote we looked at about vital power came from Christian Education, page 194. All right. All right, that was it. All right, good. All right. What is the connection about health and thy navel? Um, well, I don't think it's really necessarily a connection with the belly button itself. In the Bible, it refers to a number of different locations in the body. Sometimes it talks about the kidneys, sometimes it talks about the bowels, sometimes it talks about the heart, sometimes it talks about various different aspects. But in essence, what it's saying is that is that it's going to be health to your being, health to your body, and so on. I said, um, and and so it can be. That's how I understand that to be interpreted. Um, all right, so Jeannie, and then we'll get to some more of the comments and questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I too have two, but before I ask the two questions, I wanted to share with Maria Ramsey that I used to take 40 milligrams of omeprazole, and I do take the slippery elm in the event I need it, but I take it as needed. The doctor had accidentally lowered the slippery elm to 20 when my gastrologist, I think it's a liver specialist, they wouldn't do it at all. But my internal medicine doctor, somehow it got lowered. So I'm planning on, and this brings me to the first question. Have you ever worked with slippery elm for asthma? Um,
No.
no, because I was wondering, if it helps to do anything in the lungs or something like that. Because I'm looking at the Elliptal is costing over 200 a month, and I do not want to continue the Elliptal. I don't have that kind of money. And not only that, but here's the thing. I mean, I don't really like a lot of these medications that I am on. I want to look at coming off. I'm going to see if I can start skipping the 20 milligrams of omeprazole and see where that lands me. But I'll be careful with it. But the Elliptal is, if I don't take it after a while, it even seems to affect, because it's there for the asthma, but it seems to affect also the sleep apnea that I used to have and the desaturation. And then I get the pounding and wake up with the pounding in the heart. The heart is pounding and the eyes are bloodshot and just a lot of different things. So I was hoping that would take care of both of them, but
Right.
we'll see. But
Yeah,
any,
no, I don't know about slippery elm's effectiveness when it comes to asthma, but I threw in the chat a protocol that a friend of mine who struggles with asthma has put together. It said 3 day
oh,
water
okay,
fast. It says 3 day water fast. Check your doctor first if you're on meds. Then a 60% raw plant-based diet. Lose, stop calling me. Then a 60% raw plant-based diet, no flesh foods, no eggs, dairy, animal products, a low oil or oil-free. Important, don't overeat, and then go ahead and walk after meals. While eating, make sure that you drink at least an ounce of water daily for every 2 pounds that you weigh. Specials include 3 tablespoons of probiotic, dairy-free yogurt before meals on an empty stomach. Um, and then this is his kind of herbal concoction for an asthma exacerbation, up to 10 days at a time, a tablespoon of echinacea, a quarter teaspoon of golden seal, a tablespoon of mullein, lobelia, stinging nettle, and 2 tablespoons of licorice. And leave the licorice out if you've got high blood pressure. Boil it for 20 minutes in five
yeah,
cups of water, strain, cool, drink throughout the day. And then supplements, vitamin D3, 50,000 international units for a day for 3 to 7 days. Zinc, 50 milligrams a day for 7 days. Magnesium citrate, 400 milligrams. And then hydrotherapy, 7 exchanges of chest fomentations twice a day, 3 to 5 exchanges. Contrast shower daily. Stress management, keep your eyes on Jesus, exercise as you're able, rest as you're needed, as is needed, and use your rescue nebulizers
Yeah,
as
I
needed.
have that. Hmm. Uh,
Yeah.
and so he didn't happen to have anything to replace the albuterol that can go into the nebulizer? Not really, right?
No, no. I don't know of anything that really replaces
So I
it.
need to stay on that albuterol.
Right.
All right, yeah, I take that as rescue, especially when I'm dealing with grasses and leaves and all that in the garden.
Hmm.
And and so my next question was, thank you for that. I'll get that copied and pasted in Google Docs so I can have it all the time. My next question was, I wanted to make sure I understand the vital um, the vital
Force.
forces. Um, my understanding, and I'm not sure if it's correct, we get that at birth, a certain amount, like a bank account, and as that gets used up, that's it.
So it's not completely clear to me. All I have is the quotes that I've shared with you, that are there, which give kind of indications. It seems that if there is a big enough insult to the system and it overwhelms the vital force at the moment, you die, right? Um, and if it doesn't overwhelm the system at the moment, then you have a sufficient amount of vital force, you can recover. And the amount of vital force that you have determines how fast you recover and how well you recover from whatever that insult or injury or infection or, whatever it was. And yes, it seems to be something that if you progressively or habitually overutilize it, like staying up late, getting up early, not getting a lot of, not getting your rest, by overeating, overtaxing yourself, overworking, do other things like that, then you can deplete it early and then you don't live as long. That sounds a bit like David's life, King David. Um, he got to the age of 70 and he couldn't even keep himself warm in bed. Um, and so they had to go look for, you know, and look for anybody. They look for one of the most beautiful, women in the, in the country to come and sleep in the bed with the old man and keep him warm. But anyways, um, part of the reason why he didn't live much longer is because his life was so difficult in his earlier years. And he was, running from Saul, he was running for his life, he was living in caves, he was, and so on and so forth. And that had a toll, on his life, and it had a toll on his longevity. If he had, if his life had been lived in a palace and he had not had such strenuous, life and overtaxation and other things of that nature, then presumably he would have lived longer. And we can do things that help with the vital force, i.e., healthy lifestyle, things that help with restoring physiology like hydrotherapy and other things of that nature. And then we can do things that destroy it, like using toxins and tobacco and alcohol and so on and so forth. That's about all I know. I don't know really specifics in relation to that, but that seems to be the kind of the indicators that are there that have been written.
Hmm, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Hmm. You're welcome. All right. Somebody said my brother is a womanizer, dates women often, but also mistreats them. He curses, gets angry quite often, appears to be healthy, but what would be the potential consequences following this spiritual decay? Um, well, God knows because he's the one that knows your brother's heart, and he knows what it would be needed in order to reach your brother in that condition. Um, and um, and he may need to know, he may know that that he needs your brother to get to a certain place in his life before these consequences can come, so that your brother will be open to the consequences and then searching after God in relation to them. I mean, I can't look at that and necessarily predict what the outcome will be, except that I do know that, the research shows that individuals that have higher levels of anger or hatred tends to have higher rates of heart attacks, right? So will he develop cardiovascular disease, hypertension, things of that nature? It's possible, right? It's possible that that's something that's coming down the line, but it might not be there yet. And it could be that there are so many obvious manifestations of his inability to control himself that God doesn't need the additional manifestations of disease in order to show him that he's out of control. Um, he's clearly out of control. But God knows, and He's working with each one, and He's trying to save them. And whatever manifestations are necessary in order for that salvation, then God is willing to allow that to be the case for the purpose of their salvation. What spicy products aggravate and inflame the blood? And what are the problems in practical terms to have inflamed blood? Well, I know those are terms that are used in Spirit of Prophecy, and I'm not exactly sure what inflamed blood actually means, um, and exactly how she was using it, that particular terminology. Um, what spicy products are aggravating? Well, we do know that um, that if you have like spicy peppers and other things of that nature, there is research that shows that it increases the risk of gastric cancer. And there are some indicators that there's a correlation between it might be a mild correlation, but anyways, a correlation between the consumption of highly spicy foods and the propensity to have it to be aggravated or respond in a frustrated or an angry way or things of that nature. Um, but I don't have much more to say than that particularly. Um, any advice or information on how to help a male person around 30 years of age who is electrocuted with high voltage, currently in the hospital, and they put him in coma? Pray for him. Pray for him. Right? And, get others together and pray for him as well and intercede on his behalf. Um, there's not much that you can do. Let the hospital do what they do. Let the care team do what they do. Don't try to interfere from that standpoint, but pray for him. And if anybody's, if he's somebody that's open to, um, if he's open to prayer, if he's open to, things of that nature, or has been, and you can get in there in the ICU where he is, pray with him, right? Pray in his ear. Because you don't know what people are actually hearing. There's a number of individuals that have come out of coma, and sometimes long-standing coma, and they were aware of things that were happening around them. They just couldn't respond to it, and so that's something um, to think about and to respond to. Um, how to naturally remove a small cyst on the face or the cheek without surgery. There's a few things that you could potentially do. Um, uh, but it's, you kind of want to know what the thing is. um, before you start messing around with it. So it'd be nice to have a diagnosis you um, before you start trying to treat it naturally. I know individuals that have used a number of different products. One of the products that people use is called black salve. Black salve. At the basis of it is bloodroot, but it has some other components to it as well. Some people claim that black salve is selective in the type of cells that it kills. I don't believe that at all. It is a caustic agent, and so it will kill most anything that it comes into contact with. Some people will take bloodroot and they will drink it. Good for you. And anyway, so some people will use it for cancer, skin cancers, other things like that. I know one alternative practitioner. I remember watching one of his videos and he treated somebody with breast cancer and he ended up removing the entire breast, ultimately with multiple applications of black salve. It looked very painful and very uncomfortable and so on, and I wouldn't suggest it at all. But anyways, if you have a small lesion, on your skin, and you're not going to the dermatologist, you're just not going to the doctor at all, and you want to get rid of that thing, well, you can use black salve. You can put it there in the area and then, you know, on that spot and leave it, and it will start killing the cells under that, and then you reapply and then you reapply until the thing is gone. If it's deeper and you don't get all of it, then it'll probably grow back. Um, Another thing that you could use is an acid. There's a certain type of acid that's used to remove warts. Let's see, that is trichloroacetic acid or salicylic acid. All right. Trichloroacetic acid or salicylic acid. Usually there's like a pad that you can get, almost like a Band-Aid that has a little disc in the middle that has the acid on it. It's usually for warts, for removing warts, but it kills normal tissue too. And you can put that on there, or there's a little kind of like almost like a little tincture bottle, and then it has a little dipper in it, and then you put the little dipper in it, and then you put it on the skin. Don't put too much. If it runs, it's an acid. It's going to burn wherever it goes. Um, those are things that can potentially be used. Um, can masturbating frequently develop acne? If so, why? Also, are there other symptoms? I heard going off dairy and increasing water helps asthma. Yes, that's true. Coming off of the dairy, it definitely helps asthma. That is very true. Um, about the correlation between masturbation and acne, I'm not aware of that correlation. Um, Now, what are some other symptoms? I, there is a book in the Ellen G. White database, and the book is called An Appeal to Mothers. An Appeal to Mothers. So if you go to the Ellen White database and you look up An Appeal to Mothers, um, and you read the book, it's a short one. It's not very long. It is all about that topic, and it talks about all of the different side effects associated with it. And it's been a long time since I've read it, and so I can't remember all of the side effects necessarily associated with it, but I know that she talks about it affecting the mind or the ability to think well or to think clearly, and also that it can have an effect on the back, and that individuals can end up with chronic back problems associated with masturbation as well. Why is that the case? I'm not sure. But there are more symptoms that are listed in that book, and it would be a good thing to look into.
Would it have something to do with the zinc levels, brother Mark?
Yeah, I think the
Zinc,
zinc
losing
level.
zinc.
Yeah, I think the zinc levels have to do with like the thinking, and its impact upon the mind. but I'm not sure that that's the correlation when it comes to the back pain. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Um, what can be done to prevent nose bleeding for someone who easily bleeds when the heater is very high or in cold temperatures? Is easily cold or warm extremities, both hands and feet since birth, worrisome? All right. Um, all right. So first of all, with nose bleeding, typically an individual who has nose bleeding um, with the heater on or in the colder temperatures is because when the heater is run, usually it's drying out the air. And so now you have a more arid environment, and it's easier for the surface of the nose to become dry and then brittle. And if there's a vein that's right underneath the surface, then that can be something that contributes to it. Now, the fact that there's repetitive nose bleeding is also a what should I say is also there can be anatomic features associated with it. So, meaning that you have veins that are very close to the surface of the skin in the nasal passage. Sometimes what an ear, nose, throat specialist will do, or if you're bleeding in the emergency department, because I used to take care of patients in the ER with significant nosebleeds, sometimes what you can do is pack everything in, get the bleeding stopped, isolate the area where it's bleeding, and then cauterize it. So you kind of burn the area so that you burn back the vein and so on, so that it doesn't continue. It's bleeding in that area. That might be something that needs to happen. Um, there's, of course, the question of if the bleeding is from one side or if the bleeding is from the other. Is it the right nostril bleeding? Is it the left nostril bleeding? And if that's the case, and it has been something over a prolonged period of time, um, and um, and if that is the case, then then there's the question of, okay, well, what might be behind that? What is it that can affect tissues in the area and change function and potentially lead to bleeding beyond trauma, beyond physical trauma. And then there's the question of the mind, and is there anything going on in the mind that's bothersome, that's a problem, that's repetitive, that might be associated with times of bleeding. But there are physical factors. There clearly are physical factors. The increased heat with the decreased humidity, blowing the nose really hard, nose picking, and so nose picking actually is the most common cause for nosebleeds, and so on. What can be done? I would add a humidifier to the to the room or the space where you are, so you increase the humidity, and that should decrease the nosebleeds that you have. Um, if you use, for example, if you have like a wood stove in the home, what you can do is you can put a water pot on the top of the wood stove so that it's constantly, putting more moisture into the air and so on. Or buying a humidifier and adding a humidifier, that's something that can help. You may, if it's constantly a repetitive issue, you might want to see an ear, nose, throat specialist, have them do a rhinoscopy, see if there's any abnormalities that they can identify, cauterize, and so on. And then the other part of the question is easily cold or warm extremities worrisome, like hands and feet since birth. Not necessarily. Um, yeah, not necessarily, unless you're in a situation where it's too cold and you develop frostbite. Um, then, that would be a problem. Um, but it would be helpful to have it is helpful to have the extremities as well covered as the trunk so that you even out the temperatures, right? So if you've got 3 layers on your trunk, then it's helpful to have 3 layers on your legs and your arms as well so that it's evenly distributed. In fact, I played around with this for a while, um, one of those winters a number of years ago. And it was interesting. I could handle colder temperatures if I made sure my extremities were well covered, even though my trunk wasn't as well covered. So if I reverse things like we normally do, and I put more on my legs and more on my arms, and not as much on my chest and abdomen, I actually tolerated colder temperatures better. Um, but anyways, for proper circulation, having even covering is an important thing. I know this is kind of early, but do you have the dates for your spring camp meeting? No, I still don't. We're trying to work on a venue. In other words, not doing it here on our campus, um, because then we would be limited just to tents and then people in hotels and other things like that. And so we're trying to secure a venue where everybody can be together, everybody can have rooms, everybody can, and we can have meetings inside and not just be dependent upon the outside temperature and whether it's raining or cold and freezing and whatever. And we've reached out and we're still waiting for word back on that. So once we know, we will let you know. It will be in April, but I don't have the ex dates exactly in April. All right. And Brother Stephen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, if someone's always, excuse me, getting headaches, with sun, always getting out in the sun gets headaches straight away. Could it be anything to do with not getting the REM sleep and consistently not getting it, and also eating very late at night? You know, just wondering whether that has any correlation. Yeah, and if not, any other issues? Why
Yeah.
someone always gets
I-
headaches in the sun? Thank you.
Yeah, another thing, I don't know about those particular things. I don't know about a correlation between REM sleep and headaches in the sun or um one of the things that I would think of is dehydration. The potential for dehydration. If an individual is dehydrated, then I would think that there would be a greater likelihood for that to happen. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I don't know about those other two factors and their correlation with it. And then, of course, as everything else, it comes back to, all right, what's going on in the mind as well? Is there anything that I can learn um, from, through this? Is there something that can be resolved? Are there manifestations in my lifestyle that could improve? You know, and so on. And then how do I trust this in God's care and and cooperate with him in the process of discovering and cooperating with him and recovering in this condition, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
hmm What issues can cause a massive hemorrhagic stroke? Massive hemorrhagic stroke. So there's two types of strokes generally that we refer to. One is an ischemic stroke, which is probably the most common, and then there's a hemorrhagic stroke. An ischemic stroke is where you have um, something, a plaque, whatever, a blood clot, something that goes up into the vasculature, into the arteries, up into the brain space, and then it gets stuck. And then anything that would be supplied, any part of the brain that would be supplied by the blood from that artery beyond that point, doesn't get the oxygen supply, doesn't get the nutrients, and so on, and that part of the brain dies, right? That was what we would call an ischemic stroke. And like with a heart attack, the bigger the thing is and where it gets stuck, the more of the brain gets affected And if you have a small ischemic stroke, you could survive that. If you have a big ischemic stroke, it might kill you right away. And then, depending on which structure of the brain is affected, depends on what kind of effects that you would have associated with that stroke. A hemorrhagic stroke is different. What happens in a hemorrhagic stroke is that a blood vessel, typically an artery, bursts open, and now you have blood that is that is going throughout, and it's infiltrating the brain. It's putting pressure on other structures in the brain, and in essence, what it does is, even though it's bleeding out, it's irritating the brain. It's putting pressure on the brain, and now it's creating an ischemic event in the part of the brain that's being pressured by the blood that's coming out of that artery. Plus, you have decreased blood that's going to that part of the brain that would be supplied by the artery, and and then so it's not good. It's not good. How do you tell the difference between an ischemic stroke and a hemorrhagic stroke? Really difficult to tell. There might be some few slight features that you look at and you go, I don't know, maybe this is hemorrhagic, maybe this is, but even in the ER, we had a hard time predicting whether it was a hemorrhagic or an ischemic stroke until we got a scan back and saw whether there was blood or there wasn't blood. Um, so, what would be going on? Well, there would be some kind of weakness in the wall of the artery or the blood vessel, the vein, um, where the event happened. Sometimes that can be what we call an aneurysm, where you have kind of you have your artery wall, and then you have this balloon kind of sticking out the edge. And then that balloon is thinner on the outside, it can't handle as much pressure. And when your blood pressure goes up, then the balloon goes, and and then the bleeding happens. That's called a berry aneurysm. Um, and there might be some other, structural abnormalities that are there. Why is it that aneurysms develop where they do? It's a very good question. Were they there from birth? I suppose it might be a possibility. It would be interesting to do some studies of scanning the vasculature of little ones and growing up and see what kind of, if little ones have the same rates of aneurysms as older ones do. I suspect they don't. So I think it's something that develops later on in life. Is it is it a problem with the genes in the area of that? Well, if it is, then something had to happen. In the meantime, it's not inheritance, because inheritance would involve all of the blood vessel. Um, is it physical issues? Well, it could be blood pressure, right? Increasing blood pressure. Sometimes it's with straining when somebody's going to the bathroom. That's when they pop an aneurysm, or when they're coughing or sneezing. That can increase the blood pressure, or they're very angry, and that increases the pressure inside the blood vessel, and then, you know, so those physical factors can be involved as well. And then, of course, we need to ask ourselves the question of what's going on in the mind, and of an individual that may be developing in over years, and then, the final product at the end. Are there specific spiritual issues that are the cause? Probably. What are they? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. If it was the case, well, I'm not sure I would find out, because if it was a massive hemorrhagic stroke, they're probably not going to survive. If they do survive, they're probably going to be very limited, and my ability to get a good, thorough history from them and what their life was like and what thoughts they were having and so on and so forth would be quite limited. So discovering that is probably going to be pretty limited as well. But my ability to discover is dependent on getting the history from the individual and dealing with things on a case by case basis. And I don't have enough experience with individuals with massive hemorrhagic strokes of having a good, thorough history of them, to see if there's any correlations that I might find from it. Right. So I get to cry uncle. I don't know. But all right. Um,
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead. Hey V, how are you?
I'm doing well, Doc. How you doing?
Doing good. Yes, ask your question.
So, I had been struggling with some weight loss for like two years, after like COVID. So I went from being like really fit and like a fitness instructor, stuff like that, to like when COVID hit, like more like at 2021 when they really started like to shut stuff down. And I stopped going to the gym. I stopped working out, obviously, and then I started eating like poop, and then I started to gain all the weight. Um, then a couple years passed in like 2023, 2024. I started to take a little bit more initiative with my health. I had to start slow again because things started to hurt my body. There was inflammation. I was experiencing some SIBO and some H. pylori and a number of things that had transpired that I needed help, um, you know, perfecting. I went to a naturopath. I got on that, and the SIBO went away, but the H. pylori was just. And I remember Barbara talking about the H. pylori. Um, I tried getting, those methods, and nothing seemed to have been working. So I went against what I hadn't done in a long time, and I took the antibiotics to help to eradicate it because at this point it spread like, and my family had it, so they think that it was like something that happened at that point. So then I was still now 2024 really going to the gym, 3 to 4 times a week, resistance training, everything people say that you should do in your 40s. I was eating a good amount of protein to develop, the muscles. And I could see a little bit of shifting, but like that nothing that you should be seeing. I mean, I wasn't even losing like a pound a week.
Hmm.
So I could see some body recomposition happening a little bit, but for like a year's worth, it wasn't enough. And I refused to do dieting because of, the past yo-yo dietings and all that crap that they people say, excuse me if I said that like that. But because of all that, hogwash that people say that you're supposed to do. Yes, I went on a calorie deficit to see some stuff. And again, just eating pretty normal and like healthy normal, and then still nothing. So then I got a nutritionist. I did all the things, doc. I went and I talked to a doctor, a real doctor, and that's how we got the prescription to eradicate stuff. And then, because my insurance was able to give me a nutritionist, we tried a bunch of stuff for like 3 months, and then nothing was happening. And so she finally was like, Blinky, have you considered a GLP-1? And that was something that I really wasn't, I guess I wasn't completely up for, but at
Okay.
this point, I wasn't against it anymore because I'm like, okay. And so then I had asked all the right questions. I prayed about it and I had peace about taking it. Um, and I've been taking it since August. So I'm on like still like the baby dose. That's what everybody calls it. But I was seeing finally some weight coming off, and we're talking like 1 to 2 pounds a week. The first month, I think I lost like 6 pounds, but then after that, it's just been like the regular normal 1 to 2 pounds a week. I had gone to a place where I kind of stunted a little bit now on it. And I think what was happening in my body is maybe I was dealing with a little bit of resistance and insulin resistance, that because even if like I eat a cookie or something on it, I like instantly get like this sugar rush, this like head rush. I can't even finish sometimes a whole cookie. Like if my child bakes or whatever, like things like that, which is good. And I've noticed like a lot of the food noise had gone away. But now I'm like in a stunted place. I don't know if you know much about GLP-1s or anything like that, but it seemed to have I by now we're in December and I have lost since August about almost 25 pounds, which yes is good, and I see like the body recomposition, like I'm seeing muscle. I'm not losing muscle mass. I did a DEXA scan to see where it was at. I was waiting until like January to do another one to just kind of compare it so that I can give myself my own analysis. Because to tell you the
Right.
truth, I don't even think my doctor knows how to. She asked me, she's like, "What do you want to do that for?" Like she didn't know about that stuff. I'm like, I just need you to order it for me, okay? So, and then I put it in through AI, and AI helped me understand. I know it's a tool. I just used it, and it helped me to understand what my body composition was. It read my results. And so I guess I said all that to say, I'm in a point right now where I've been like the same thing. I tried to up the dose, um and it just it I knew it just didn't feel right. Like I hadn't gotten any side effects prior to that. Then I was starting to feel some side effects. I was like not being able to like eat because it really really takes away the appetite at that dose which is 5 milligrams. So I ended up just dosing back down, and I was like, I'm just gonna stay at the 2.5. I'm like, I can't go up to 5 because I don't really like the way that I feel on it. And so my question is, have you heard anything about those things, or what do you feel might be like next steps for something like that? Full
Um,
transparency.
yes. Yes. Um, so previously, when you had tried various different things, had you gotten to a whole food plant-based diet, or were you working on other types of diets?
I was pretty much mostly whole foods. I mean, like there was the occasional, and when I say occasional, I'm talking like maybe once or twice every 2 months, but not quite like once a month. You know what I mean? Like we would order out, and then but I would still keep it like just like meat and vegetables, and not fully plant-based.
Hmm.
But I would eat some meat. I mean, I do like tofu now, so thanks to that retreat. I do incorporate tofu to get the protein in, but
Right.
no, not a full plant-based diet. No.
Okay. Well, that would be a suggestion or a recommendation. Um, the the GLP-1 inhibitors, some of the potential side effects that come along with them is an increased risk for cancer later on, especially on the thyroid, um, and then potentially kidney injury, and then GI issues. So pancreatitis, bowel obstructions, um, gallbladder obstructions as well with need for surgery. Um, and then, um, GERD, gastritis, liver function tests being, elevated and other things of that nature. So it's got issues. It's not perfect. Does it lead to individuals to weight loss? Yes, it does. Is it the best way of pursuing it? Probably not. Is it easier than doing other things? Yes, it is, and that's why people go to it. In fact, that's why most of our healthcare system is the way that it is because it's easier. Um, Now, if you're in the situation where you're looking at wanting to lose weight but maintain muscle mass and so on, then if you're working out, especially with resistance exercise, like with weights, resistant bands, squats, push-ups, other things of that nature, and you're sticking to a plant-based diet, cut out the animal foods, and you really don't have to worry about the proteins, really. You actually, if on a plant-based diet, you would have to work at becoming protein deficient. I mean, you'd really have to work at it. In fact, one of the challenges that are given to nutrition students is to go to the grocery store and put together a meal or a diet plan for a week or 2 weeks or something like that that includes enough calories for, whatever it is, 1,800 calories, 2,000 calories, and so
Yeah.
on a daily basis, but is actually protein deficient. Um, and it's not actually easy to do. If you want a complete protein, all you need is a legume and a grain. A legume and a whole grain. Doesn't matter which legume it is, doesn't matter which whole grain it is. You can have corn and peas. You can have beans and rice. You can have lentils and uh, tortillas. You can, or naan. You can have, any legume, any grain, and that's a complete protein. Now, there are certain plant
Yeah.
foods that are complete proteins in and of themselves, and they don't need any supplementation. One would be soy. Soy is a complete protein. Um,
Pumpkin is too, right?
um, well,
Pumpkin seeds.
like sweet potato, but if you eat a bunch of it, right? If you eat a bunch of it, sweet potato also, if you ate 2,000 calories of sweet potato, you'd have complete protein. But most people don't eat that much of sweet potato, and pumpkin is on a similar line. Um, let's see,
But
quinoa.
aren't the seeds
Quinoa is a complete protein.
are the seeds complete protein? Pumpkin seeds?
Yes, they have a better profile than the pumpkin flesh itself. Right. And so on. But you don't even have to worry about that. And you don't even have to make sure that you have the complete proteins in a single meal. And in fact, the research is showing that you don't even have to have it in a single day, right? If you had run grains one day and you had legumes a couple days later and you had whatever, it all works out anyways, right? So, excuse me, you know, and
So
and
the trainer, I just wanted to just ask one thing, just because you're bringing this up. So that, you know, if the trainers, and the powers that be in this are saying that, to maintain the muscle mass, to grow the muscle, because I really want to grow the muscles. Like, I know why and how important muscle is. Um, so like, they recommend that you have one 1 to 1.5 grams of protein a day per pound.
right,
And I'm like, that's a lot of pounds. That's a lot of protein. And so I'm here pounding all kinds of protein in. Like I said, I'm seeing some results, but
right,
I feel like I've stunted. So it's time to kind of switch something up a little bit to get back. I'm not like one of those people that wants to be on this for the rest of my life. I really did use it to assist. I
right,
saw a lot of those things happen to, the lab rats that they did on. Not They didn't really find a lot of this, like, those things in humans, and it's not like a new thing. But and that's just to, like, advocate a little bit, in case anybody else is on here is probably afraid of that. I'm not afraid, because I know Jesus. So um, I just wanted to, like, throw that in. So what is your thoughts about that much protein, to maintain the muscle?
right. So, um, I understand the recommendations and I understand the rationale behind the recommendations. Typically, what's actually needed is less than what's advocated. Um,
Okay.
and and the the potential complications with pushing the proteins too high, including plant proteins, right? And that is that it can have a deleterious effect on the kidneys, because the kidneys are going to be doing a lot of the filtering that's happening. And one of the things that's not spoken of a lot is the issues with kidney disease in the bodybuilding industry.
Got it. Okay.
Because there's so much of an emphasis on, pushing the protein and pushing the protein and so on and so forth. And that ends up having a difficult effect on the kidneys. And, yeah, and so it's something where, okay, if I'm pushing things in one direction and it creates defects in another direction, then clearly I'm not in a situation where I'm balanced. Right? And really, what I want to do is I want to be in a situation where I'm balanced, where what I'm doing is I'm helping the system as a whole, and my helping of the system is not deteriorating another part of the system. Because if I'm improving one part, but another part is deteriorating, I'm actually
Mhm.
not helping my system. I'm just switching the location of where the problem is, right? And really what I want to do is I want to work in a way where I'm not detracting anything, but I'm also moving forward as far as the system as a whole is concerned. And and when you look at things from that standpoint, well, it's probably not the healthiest thing to be the biggest bodybuilder or the one that can,
Right.
that can do the most um, hit training and other things of that nature. It's, the individuals that are on the very high level of performance are not actually the ones that live the longest. It's the ones that have a lower level of performance but do so consistently over a long period of time. Those are the ones that live longer because it supports the system better, you know. So, some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to like I do have a goal weight, that I want to get down because I didn't get into any of this like unbeknownst to like but when I was younger, like I wanted to get into this because I was afraid to be, big and things like that and child trauma, all the past stuff that
Right.
I've been delivered from. Um, but when the Lord said to me, instead of wanting muscles because, you don't like your arms or because of this, why don't you go find out why you need muscles? And
Right.
so then I did. And then he's like, instead of finding this, why don't you go find out why you need that? Why you should eat this? Why you shouldn't eat that? Why don't you go find that out first? Because I mean, I think everybody can build a case of why, meat's the best or why protein's the best and why, plant-based is the best. I think you're right. I think a good balance is probably it's it's is like the way to go with stuff. But I did it because I'm like I couldn't tie my shoes without gasping for air. I'm like, okay, I know. I was starting to experience some sleep apnea, things that weren't had nothing to do with cosmetics. And so I was like, okay, I need some help
Right.
for
Yeah.
for these areas. And so then I did it for that. And again, not with the intention. I only did it because knowing that if I wanted to come off of it, I could. This is not one of those things that if you come off of it, like all of a sudden, like all this stuff is like breaking in your body.
Right.
Um, and those were the basis on why I made this decision. So now I'm in a place where obviously January is coming around and I typically do a fast. So
Right.
thank you for the suggestion because I'll do that. I'll do my fast with, pulse and plant-based and look at that and see how it is because I am the doctor of my body most times. I'm always researching to see, okay, I'm feeling like this. I don't know what to do. When I saw your email today and I had some time, I was like, oh, I hope they're still on and I can jump on. So thanks, Doc. I appreciate
Mhm.
it. It's
Sure
nice to
thing.
see you.
Yeah, same here. All right. Well, um, last question here. Does activated charcoal help with headaches? Um, Try it out, see if it works. I haven't noticed it working in my own experience, and I haven't heard testimonies of that being the case with others, but I haven't heard everything. So if you're having headaches and you use charcoal and it's working for you, let me know. I want to know. Let's
Yeah.
pray, and we
Thanks,
will
brother.
be back. Yeah, sure thing. We'll pray, and then let's see. Will we be back? Yes, we will be back. I will try to make it home by um, by group session time next Monday. I will be in Huntsville, Alabama. I'll be speaking at the Huntsville Central um, Church, and that'll be this coming weekend, Friday, Sabbath, Sunday. And so if anybody's in the area, I'd love to see you. And then we're planning on being back by group session next Monday evening. And for that one, we will be looking at, I think the topic is allopathic medicine God's way?
Sorry, brother, Dr. Mark.
Sure.
I know you're probably very tired, but is there any chance of just giving Raj just a quick few minutes just to explain his situation, helping widows in India?
So what's written here in the chat, there is a fundraiser. Need a place to worship. Sundarbans Adventist Church, GoFundMe. Um, to share and donate to it, there is a link there in the chat. It is gofund.me/2C as in Charlie, 207A as in Alpha 433. So those that are online, you could go to gofund.me/2C as in Charlie, 207A as in Alpha 433, and support that. All right. Well, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your blessings. You are a wonderful God. We thank you for that. You have made us in a very marvelous way. And Lord, help us to understand more and more how we can cooperate with you and how you can work out your will and way in our lives as we cooperate with you in working out that will and way in our lives as well. And bring us back together again next week as we continue to look at topics related to health and how we might understand how we cooperate with you. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.